everybody, and welcome back. It is a jam-packed episode of the Jack Wagon Sports Podcast here on the Jack Wagon Sports Network. It is the once weekly, never weekly show. We're down a member today. Lost a comrade to work. Pussy. Anyway,
It's just sad about, I don't know, something.
I mean, he's better man than I am because he put his 2 weeks in and he's still going. So
That's fair.
shout out to Slade.
If I even put my 2 weeks in, you're lucky to get a week.
If I even think about putting 2 weeks in, I just stopped going.
Just know that it wasn't a terrible job.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, we had a action-packed weekend from racing to basketball to hockey to golf. So we have a lot to talk about, and we're going to talk about it all with you guys. Just dive right into it. We finally have the NBA Finals all set up after the Celtics Heat Game 7. Nick, real quick, before we get into the finals, what were your thoughts on Game 7? I believe Game 5 wrapped up before. No, I think we had just talked about Game 5 and then it wrapped up. But everybody knew the Warriors were going to win. But what were your thoughts on Game 7? And real quick.
Game 6 and 7, both, the Heat definitely put up more of a fight than I thought they were going to. We had talked about, Butler's injury and what that was going to do. And I'm pretty sure we weren't even sure if he was going to play Game 6 at that time. But nonetheless, took it 7 games. Both of those teams are fighters. And Boston just kind of like it seemed in the Milwaukee series as well. Boston just wanted it more. You can tell Boston's got that chip on their shoulder. They feel like they should have been in this position, a couple years out of the last couple. So it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, it was, like you said, Game 6 and 7 were great. Game 6, the Heat came out. You could tell they meant business. I think it was the night before. Draymond Green was talking a little shit, saying, "Oh, we can't wait to play Boston." There's all this other stuff, though. The Heat came out, and they had that chip on their shoulder, and they played really well. Dominated just about the whole game, I would say. Then you go to Game 7, and you could tell from the jump Boston was the better team, but the Heat were just able to control the pace of play a little bit better. Boston missed a couple big shots. I mean, they could have easily pulled away by more at halftime, and it felt weird. They were only up, I think, like 8. And I was like, this is a team that should be winning by like 20 points right now, if not 30. But Miami did a great job of keeping themselves in it. Boston started to pull away a little bit to start the second half, but here come the Heat again. They get within 1. Butler goes down and misses that shot. Everybody was giving him shit for it, and he's like, listen, and I don't blame him for taking it, but he was like, my teammates felt comfortable with me taking that shot. I was wide open, and I wanted to go for the win, so that's what I did. And I don't blame him one bit at all. There's nobody else on that team I would have trusted with shooting the ball. Controversial overturned 3 late in the game too didn't help, but nonetheless, it was a great game. But there's only so much one person can do. We've seen that with so many teams now. Especially like one person comes to mind is LeBron. When LeBron won his one championship in Cleveland, he had, Love did play a part, but it was more Kyrie helping him a lot too. And then every other year when it was LeBron by himself, he wasn't able to do it. So that's kind of what we saw with Miami. And again, it's a recurring story. They made it to the finals a few years ago, but you could argue this playoffs were weird. But Tyler Hero at least stepped up, was a big part of that. They had a couple guys try to step up in Game 7. They just weren't able to, and it was Butler all on his own. And usually when it's that, it's really hard to win, especially in a 7-game series. Listen, I love Kyle Lowry. He's a former Villanova Wildcat, but that man should get an A+ for acting. He should win an Oscar. The fakes he was putting out there with the flops and everything. Like I said before, I'm kind of a Boston fan. I'm not super into basketball, but I was rooting for them, so it was good to see them win. But moving on, Celtics, Warriors. Warriors will have home court advantage in this 7-game series. Real quick, we'll get Slade's thoughts here. Slade picked Golden State in 6, which I feel is a great. It's going to be really hard to pick a winner here. I mean, it was for me anyway. But he takes Golden State in 6. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit before the show here. this is, I mean, you look at, let's just focus on Golden State side of the bracket for a second. I'd say they had a pretty dominant run in the
Yeah.
playoffs. I don't think that, yeah, they haven't played a game 7 yet. Um, but if you look at kind of the way the games went down, they definitely showed some signs of weakness. And
Mhm.
you look at, their 3 titles that they got a few years back. Um, there's that playoff Golden State team didn't really show a whole lot of signs of weakness. They lost that big blowout to the Grizzlies without John Morant. And there were a few other times where you're kind of like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Now I know, Curry had his injury and stuff like that, but nonetheless, it's not. Even though to some outsiders, like I was actually talking to a guy at work today, and he was like, "Oh, Golden State's too good. They're on fire. Um, they're gonna run away with this." I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
This is not the same shooting wise. They kind of look the same. They can put up some points. But I personally don't think it's the same Golden State team. They look good. Don't get me wrong. I had
Yeah.
a hard time deciding, but um, first of all, this is the first time I want to say since 1996, I believe I read on ESPN, um, that the top 2 rated defenses in the regular season are facing off in the finals. Which honestly was kind of a huge shock to me. I knew Golden State, played some good defense, especially Gary Payton the third or third, forget which one he is.
Second, I think he's second.
Second,
Yeah.
yeah. If he comes back, I believe they're working him back into the team practices this week. So hopefully, for their sake, he should be back. But he kind of made his role in that team as being the guy who can defend the other team's best player. And on the flip side, with Boston's defense, we've talked about it ever since the playoffs started. Um, Obviously, they're the number 1 ranked defense, and I had also read this. This will be the first time in the playoffs that the Warriors will face a team that actually prefers to switch the majority of the time. Which a lot of people might not think is a big deal. Some people might say, "Oh, if they're switching, that gives shooters more time to shoot." But the way that Golden State plays, it'll disrupt them a lot more than what a lot of people think. And if you look at the regular season series, it was split 1-1, and the win that Golden State got was only by, I believe it was 4 points. Um, so I think a lot of people are going to be, if they're not already on the Boston bandwagon, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by how well Boston plays in this series. Um, Key for Boston, obviously Jason Tatum. There's plenty of people on that team that can step up. We've seen Smart do it, Horford do it. Um, but facing this Golden State team, Jason Tatum is going to have to play like a superstar every single night. As far as Golden State, obviously, being able to find that rhythm, get into their shooting form like they like to do, and be able to score points because Boston knows how to score points too. With all that being said, my pick is Boston in 6. I wanted to say 7. Game 7 was in Golden State. I couldn't let it go to Game 7, so I'm saying Boston in 6.
Yeah. Yeah, you had some great points there. Yeah, like you said, they have played twice this year. Boston won the last meeting, 110-88. And their first meeting was just before Christmas. Golden State won that 111-107. But again, this Boston team before the All-Star break, before even Christmas, was a team that you didn't think was even going to make the playoffs this year. They were struggling. Everybody said it was time to break up Tatum and Smart, and that experiment had failed. And here they are. They're sitting in the finals. I think Smart summed it up best. He put out a tweet the other day. He's like, some people said, split, and we stayed. And I was like, that's kind of cool. Wait till you win, but
Yeah.
like it's not, nonetheless, it's monumental for them to get to this point from where they were earlier in the season. Did the stats real quick. So up to this point, Boston has played 18 games. Golden State 16. Boston is averaging 107.11 points per game, and giving up 100.83 points per game. Golden State is averaging 114.5 points per game, and giving up 102.94 points per game. The way I look at it from that statistic standpoint is, I feel like the Eastern Conference had a lot tougher defenses, and Boston had to grind a lot more. I mean, we saw that, like I said, they played 18 games. They went back to back 7 game series. Um, and really, Golden State's points per game allowed is so high because of, like you said, the one game where they lost by like 40 to the Grizzlies, even without John Morant. Um, I feel this goes 7 games regardless. Um, the reason why is like these teams know how to battle back and forth. Like you said, Golden State has had chinks in their armor, and that they've showed that this year. But um, every time we look at them, like, oh, they might be done. We watch this team. John Morant gets knocked out. We're like, okay, Celtics, or excuse me, Golden State's gonna run away with this. Like we just said, give up 40 points or lose by 40 points in a game to a team without their superstar. Now you could say, oh, they just thought they were gonna walk over, whatever. Nonetheless, it's really hard to lose by 40 points in the playoffs and
Yeah.
and bounce back from that. And that's what they did. And I think they won by like 20 the next night. And again, this is a Celtics team where you think back to the Heat series. They were up by 20 points in game one. They blow that and they lose. And there was multiple times throughout the series where they had decent leads. Think back to game 7 last night. Um, Again, they were up at 20 points at one point, and here comes Miami, and they're down by 3 all of a sudden. So I have this going 7 just because both teams know how to counter punch and just throw haymakers, and it's going to be wild. So I have Boston in 7, and the biggest reason why is I think Golden State has done a great job of guys coming off the bench and helping, but I think Boston just does a little bit better job of that. Um, Golden State has a big 3. They got Draymond, Clay, and Steph. I would say Draymond's like on the verge of falling out of that. He's more he's more of an antagonizer right now. He's not going out there putting 20 points up in a game, not a ton of rebounds, stuff like that. I feel like Boston's big 3 and their bench is a little bit more well rounded. And like I said, I think they just kind of bounce back with the punches a little bit more. They've had home court advantage in 1 series so far, and that doesn't even matter. That's the series they swept. So this is a team that can go on the road and win game 7s. We've seen that twice now. And they've beat really good teams along the way. I just feel like and they might be tired. Golden State's had a few days rest now. That's an advantage to them, but these are both teams that aren't going to give up. So I have it going 7, and I have Boston in 7.
You made a good point there. I just wanted to touch
Mhm.
on about
Yeah.
the benches. You think about that 3-4 game stretch against Milwaukee that Tatum struggled, and just in comparison, if Golden State and Milwaukee had played a 7-game series, if Curry had struggled like that, I don't know if the Warriors now obviously Jordan Poole has played well, especially without Curry. Um, but to have your top superstar struggle like that, and the team to still be able and rally against a team who, quite honestly, if it was Milwaukee in this situation instead of Boston, I'd probably still be picking Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So I think that was a great point that you touched on there.
Yeah, and I feel like that's most of the teams in the playoffs. Like we just touched on, if the Heat are playing the Bucks and Jimmy Butler has an off night, let alone 4 nights,
Yeah.
uh, Milwaukee sweeps that series. So yeah, but I really feel like Tatum has found his groove, and he is scoring more points per game. He's becoming a better, well-rounded player, the kind of player that we got used to seeing in the regular season. Um, so I think that's just another. And again, even if he struggles, I feel like Boston is just a more well-rounded team. Like we said, Golden State obviously has great players. Poole, if they get Gary Payton back, that'll be huge. But I just feel like all around, Boston's just I don't want to say a step above, but just like a hair ahead of them. The only thing that I see helping Golden State the most is just experience at this point. Obviously, this is a team that's been to finals multiple times. They've had a rough 2 years here with Curry and Clay being hurt and all that stuff. Um, so if it comes down to experience, yeah, I'm gonna say Golden State, but I just think more well-rounded, I'm gonna take Boston. Also, real quick, shout out to Al Horford. I think it was like 114 playoff games without a finals appearance, which is like the most ever. And so he finally gets his finals appearance. So good for him.
And with that being said, you talk about the experience. Golden State has three-time champions, not 3-time final appearances, three-time champions, and Boston at least off the top of my head, does not have a player, unless maybe on their bench, um, who's been in the finals. So
This is also, I think it's like 70 some years now that a player that is either on the Knicks or is formerly played for the Knicks is now playing in the NBA Finals. And I thought that was a funny stat. But yeah, I really want to say it was like 70 some years it's going on now. I heard that the other day. But enough about the NBA. We like hockey a lot more, so we're going to talk a little hockey now. Unfortunately, I had Carolina in 7. That didn't happen. I believe I think your original pick was you took Carolina in 7. And then when we like re-talked about it, I think you switched to the Rangers. But either way, and I know Slade had the Rangers too. So the Rangers blow the barn doors off of Carolina in Game 7. Not something I saw coming. I saw being a lot closer. So your thoughts on that series, and then we're going to talk about the conference finals in the East and West real quick. So your thoughts on Game 7, and then let's just roll right into you taking the Rangers or you taking the Lightning.
yeah. So again, Game 7, huge surprise. To an extent. And I say that because I didn't imagine that game going that way.
Right.
But if you look at the way that both teams have kind of played through the playoffs, New York has had that edge and that fight to them, where Carolina seemed complacent at times. So again, bigger picture, not necessarily a surprise, but in the moment, definitely did not see it going down like that at all. And as far as the series coming up, this was another tough one. Um, you know, I've doubted Tampa Bay this entire playoffs, and they keep. Not that I've been, a hater or nothing. I just felt like, they've been outmatched, but they've proven, like I believe you had said last week, why they're back-to-back champions and looking to go for the three-peat. However, um, you know, obviously New York's gone to 2 Game 7s now. You would, your first thought might be, oh well, they might be less rested and tired and all this stuff. But quite honestly, watching that Game 7 and the way it went down, I didn't see it at all.
Yeah.
They came out how they pretty much come out every game, win or lose, and that's, we're gonna come out here, we're gonna punch you in the mouth, and you're gonna know that we were playing against you. And arguments aside about cleanness and dirtiness and all that, but um, they're gonna come out and hit you, plain and simple. And Tampa Bay, to me, in my eyes, is kind of more of that finessery. They don't have, say, Connor McDavid going down the ice and swirling around 3 people and going top shelf. But as far as teamwork goes, um, they're not. They don't have that. Go out and hit you kind of style. And I think that that's going to be the Rangers' upside in this series. I think that they're going to be able to kind of impose their will physically. I don't think New York's going to dominate by any means. Both of these teams are going to fight their asses off. Tampa Bay wants that three-peat. They've shown that since the beginning of the playoffs. Rangers, um, New York in general, even with bad teams, just kind of have that mentality. You know, but let me think about this before I say. Yeah, I can say this comfortably. This is probably the best team in New York right now. So, and not just hockey, in all sports. I'd think about it, but the Yankees have been off for a couple years. So,
No, the Yankees have been pretty good.
I, I guess I don't know. I hear about
I think they're doing good because the attention's not on them right now, so like nobody's really talking about them.
yeah. But nonetheless, it's going to be a great series. I have it going to 7, and New York has been pretty great in Game 7s this year, so I'm going to go ahead and give it to New York in 7.
Yeah. Real quick, Slade also took New York, but he took them in 5, which was, I thought, kind of surprising. But so far he's kicking our ass in picks somehow.
Yeah, and he did bring up a good point. I didn't look it up to see exactly what the record was, but he said
I have it right here. He said 5-0. They're 3-0.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, real quick, they played 3 times this year. They are 3-0. They won the first game 4-3 in a shootout. They won the next night, actually 4-0, and then their last game they played. New York won 2-1. So for me, this series, it comes, and the reason I'm saying in a good way, it comes down to goaltending in a good way, because we're going to talk about the other series here in a second. Shesterkin is arguably the Vezina Trophy winner for this year. His his regular season stats were just insane, next level. The reason why New York got to the playoffs. In the playoffs, he has been really, really good at times. There's also been games he got pulled twice against Pittsburgh, and so he is definitely able to be shaken, to say the least. Vasilevsky, again, not a bad year, like in all fear by his standards, but not a bad year in any way, shape, or form. He gets to the playoffs and he flips a switch. I believe he has allowed one goal, or I can't remember if he. I know his goals allowed average is below 2 in series clinching games, or game sevens, whatever you want to call it. So this is like, if you enjoy really good goaltending, this is a series that you want to watch.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be wild. It's going to be very hard for these teams to score. I give Tampa Bay an edge in that, just because, and again, obviously Shesterkin has got a lot of work in the postseason, but I think this is the best goaltender by far the Rangers have played yet. There's been a few nights where, especially in the Pittsburgh series, they for some reason they couldn't figure out the backups. And maybe they need to play a starting goaltender, and they'll score even more. Who knows? But I think Tampa Bay has a little bit better defense. If you look at the goals allowed average, to like save percentages, Vasilevsky is a little bit more even, and that's because he's facing less shots in my mind, and that's because his defense does a great job of keeping that puck away from him. With it being said, so in the playoffs, Shesterkin is at 2.68 goals allowed a game and a .928 save percentage. Vasilevsky is 2.23 goals allowed with a .932 save percentage. So again, just a hair better than Shesterkin. But I really feel like without those two really rough games in Pittsburgh, his numbers are much better. But it is what it is. So while I am giving a slight advantage to Tampa Bay, I'm going to take the Rangers in 7 as well. And the reason is, we just talked about it with basketball. They just don't have a quit. They have no quit in them. And you think back to the Pittsburgh series, they were down 3-1 in the last 3 games. They were losing in all 3 games, and they came back and won. Everybody wrote this team off against Carolina, said, "Oh, like, you're facing a better team now. You're done." They go out and they have no quit. Real quick to Carolina, I don't know what the fuck their issue was. Right at the end of the Boston series, they announced Frederik Andersen was completely healthy and he would be back for the Ranger series. He wasn't on their bench and he never played. I don't know if he really wasn't healthy, or what was going on there, or if they decided to rest him. I don't know. But Ranta was just, unless he was at home, he was dog shit. And I don't know how you look at him going into game 7, knowing how he's played, especially on the road. Yeah, he's had some great nights at home, but you need a goalie that's good at both. Like, you can't have one or the other. And I've Googled and looked, and I see nothing about why Frederik Andersen was not in the lineup ever. But unless he was still hurt, like, he needs to be playing. He was your all-star goaltender. He was one of the best goalies in the league, and you're not playing him. And for that reason alone, they deserve to lose last night. But that is what it is. And then real quick to the offense for both of these teams. Zibanejad and Adam Fox are 4th and 5th in postseason points right now with 19 and 18 points respectively. Kucherov for Tampa Bay is in 6th with 15 points. So both of these offenses know how to put points on the board, but both of these goalies know how to stop the puck. It's going to be a very interesting chess match that I'm very excited to see. But yeah, I'm going to take the Rangers in 7. Also, I'm kind of pulling for them because maybe if I pick them to lose, who knows? I don't really want either team to win, to be honest, because I don't want Tampa Bay to get 3 cups in a row, and I don't want the Rangers to win at all. But yeah, but I really do think the Rangers, especially with having home ice, I think I'm just going to give them a slight edge overall in the series. So I'm taking them in 7. Moving on, the Colorado Avalanche versus the Edmonton Oilers. Just so you know, I'll give you the stats real quick on the season. They played 3 times as well. Colorado, it has a 2-1 advantage. They lost 6-3, and I believe their last meeting, they won the other 2 meetings 2-1 and 3-2. Slade takes Edmonton in 6. But
So
hey,
he's coming in with the heat
yeah,
this week.
but he
He's
stood
like, you
by
know
it.
what? I'm not gonna be there,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna make it hot.
But yeah, real quick, let's get your thoughts on this, and what do you think? Who you taking?
Yeah. So first thought is, I believe I had sent it to you. There was a video. I always forget his name, but the coach for Calgary. I love the man. I don't know why I never.
Sutter.
Sutter. That's it. I was thinking Sutton, but Sutter. They had asked him in the press conference after the last game if the best team won the series, and he said the best player won the series. And I mean, I love the man, and there's a lot of things he says that I just find hilarious. And a lot of things like he dumbs it down a lot of
Mhm.
times because he likes to keep things simple. Um, but that was one thing that to be like, I agree that McDavid was probably the best player on the ice. I won't argue with him on that, but especially when it comes to the playoffs, I feel like if you're especially a team like Calgary that had a relatively good regular season, I'd say. To go into the playoffs and to allow one person to beat you, um, you know, it just doesn't sit right with me. Um, Especially, a coach like him, he's got experience. You can't like whether it was play on the ice or coaching strategy or whatever the hell the situation might be. In my personal opinion, the best team won, and you know maybe on paper Edmonton wasn't the better team, but they won the series, so the better team, in my opinion, won. With that being said, I believe we had touched on it last week. I had, I've had my ups and downs with Calgary since we started the podcast. One team I have not had my ups and downs about is Colorado, which I don't think anybody's had their downs about. Um, it's actually kind of funny that Sutton made the comment, or Sutter, sorry, made the comment about the wild card team facing Colorado and it being a waste of 8 days.
Mhm.
Because I wonder what this series would look like if it was Calgary instead of Colorado, especially the way they played against Edmonton. Um, and props to Edmonton by all means. This team has found another gear in the playoffs. Especially their 2 stars. So this is going to be entertaining, no matter which way it goes. Um, I have Colorado in 6, just because I think, while Edmonton can score goals and Edmonton can be flashy and play very well at times, there's not a game that Colorado is going to go out there and shit the bed. Like you look at Calgary's game 1 against Edmonton, and they dropped what 9 goals, 8 goals, 9 goals, one of the two.
Yeah, I think it was 9.
Um, and granted they gave up 6, but you drop 9 goals, in the first game. All of a sudden, you're like, okay, this team might be pretty fucking good. They might be finding their rhythm at the right time, and then they come out and just shit the bed night after night after night. Colorado's not going to do that, so they might not come out and drop 9 goals on you, but they're going to play defense. They're going to make it hard on you to score. Um, McDavid and Draisaitl are still going to get theirs, but nonetheless, I think at the end of the day, just the talent level overall, because you got to figure, yeah, we're talking about superstars, but they're only on the ice, 1 period worth of time.
Mhm.
A little more for especially like McDavid and them will probably play more than 20 minutes worth of ice time, but nonetheless, it's a team effort, unlike what Sutter said. And I think that Colorado overall better team, and it's going to show.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm super. I think I'm more so excited to watch this series than the other one. Just for the pure fact that you're gonna have McKinnon versus McDavid, like 2 guys on the ice that can just do whatever they want with the
Oh yeah,
puck and just do filthy things. Um, But like with the last one, I said it's going to come down to goaltending in a good way. This is going to come down to whichever goaltender doesn't shit the bed.
Yeah.
Like we said, Mike Smith has had that persona around him that he makes really dumb plays sometimes, but two, he just gives up goals at the worst times, and he can give up a lot of them, as we just pointed out. Um, Kemper hasn't had a great playoffs. He's really thrived off of his defense, but whenever the puck gets to him, his save percentage is a little worse. But again, he's facing a lot less shots. His defense does a great job. So whatever shots do get through, it could be a toss up really. But he's not facing a lot of them. He has 2.44 goals allowed average, with a .904 save percentage. Mike Smith, 2.7 goals allowed, with a .927 save percentage. So again, his save percentage is a little bit better. But I give Colorado the edge massively on defense, especially with Makar out there. And this is a team where you disagree with Sutter. I kind of agree with him. I mean, Evander Kane has stepped up in a big way, which sucks to say, but he has. But at the end of the day, I really feel like this team is just riding McDavid. Draisaitl is back and he's healthy, but I still feel like he's kind of maybe a step off. Just I don't know. He's still picking up a lot of points, but I don't know. I just not 100% sure on him yet. I just feel like he's a great player, but I feel like he's just been a little off this postseason. Obviously I know he got hurt, but I think that's a big reason why. And so I don't know how much this team can ride McDavid, especially against Colorado. Colorado can kind of spread the wealth. McKinnon, Makar, Rantanen, and Landeskog, 4 great players. So I too picked Colorado. I take Colorado in 6. I think this goes 6 games. It could easily go 7. We could have a series like we had in 2009, with Crosby and Ovechkin trading hat tricks. I think that would be dope as shit to see McDavid and McKinnon. Like I said, I am super excited. If you want to see flashy, fun hockey, this is a series you got to watch.
This is gonna be great.
Yeah, if you want to see, I don't want to say boring because both Rangers and Lightning have great players, but that's definitely gonna be a more defensive and goalie battle. Whereas, like I said, this one's gonna be which goalie doesn't shit the bed. But either way,
This is honestly like the two sides of hockey.
Yeah, exactly.
In these conference championships, you got could go down the ice and create a highlight play every single time, 2 teams facing, and then you got the more methodical move the puck, score the traditional hockey goals, and both, quite honestly, especially for somebody like me that's just getting into the sport, have their moments. Obviously, the flashy, Sports Center top 10 plays are nice to see, but those tic tac toes down the ice can also be pretty damn exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is our predictions for the NHL conference finals. We will check back in on those next week. Moving on, we had a great golf tournament over the weekend. We had the Charles Schwab Challenge. I missed the first day of it, but I did watch the next 3 days. Excuse me, I watched the next 2 days. I did not watch much of Sunday because we're going to talk about racing here in a minute. Nonetheless, it was a great tournament. Sam Burns was, I want to say, he was 9 shots behind coming into Sunday. Shoots 8 under. Scotty Scheffler shoots 1 over. They go to a playoff. I'm just going to come out and say it. I honestly, God, believe Scheffler through the playoff. It was very well documented. He had to go to his sister-in-law's wedding after this tournament. And so when he realized he didn't win, and in his normal standing and went to the playoff, I think he easily could have pushed the issue a little bit more and definitely forced another playoff hole. I honestly I think he just once Burns hit that, I think it was like a 40-some foot putt. He saw that going. He's like, "Yep, you know what? I'm good. I'm gonna head out." But I don't blame him. I want to make the wedding too. Probably a lot more fun. Did you get to see any of the tournament? What were your thoughts on it?
I got to see early on, not a whole lot, and then obviously the most important round, the last round, I was out on the lake struggling to even stream the 500. So I did not get to watch. I was following along as best I
Mhm.
could. I really thought, come Saturday or Sunday at the latest, that Scheffler was going to run away with it with the way that he played early. But luckily for Burns, he struggled. I'll call it struggled. I mean, I would love to shoot +1 any day of the week,
Right.
but for Scotty Scheffler, struggled.
Yeah.
So and Burns is one of those people. We've talked about him, maybe not necessarily on the podcast, but like when we do our fantasy, uh, somebody who's had a relatively good season so far, and at the very least, it's nice to see him, get a win. Maybe that'll boost his confidence and get him back up, continuing to compete for those.
Yeah, his third win of the year now. He's putting in together a career year, which is awesome to see for him. Um, yeah, I really thought like Scheffler didn't start off super hot, um, but he was doing pretty decent on the front nine. I think the weather started to catch everybody out on the back nine. One of the big stories of the day, um, Harold Varner was tied for the lead at 10 under, going into I think it was 11, and he then proceeded to shoot 10 over the last 8 holes, to finish at even for the tournament. So that was horrible to see. Um, but yeah, the wins really started to pick up there as the leaders were moving down the back nine. It just became super challenging, which is what you want to see. I mean, it's obviously sucked for them because everybody else got to finish in great weather, and here they are struggling to make it down the back nine. But it did make for an exciting finish. I did get to see. I think Scheffler got to 17 when I had to turn it off and switch over to the other race. Even at that point, I thought he still had it. I thought he would regroup and get it. But yeah, it's still a great uh, finish to that tournament there. They will head to Ohio this weekend for the Memorial Tournament, which I think it has a pretty stacked field. Some big names are skipping it. JT is finally taking a break after his PGA Championship. Missed the cut for I think it was the first time in 16 events now, which broke his streak.
I
Which
believe so.
which sucks for him. But I mean, at the same time, he got a PGA Championship out of it, so
Yeah,
you can't complain too
I'd take
much.
it any day of the week.
Yeah, Scheffler also taking the weekend off. A few other names. So, but either way, the Memorial Tournament is super fun to watch, um, and a lot of big names will be there. So make sure you go check that out this weekend. Moving on. Last weekend we touched on this. We labeled it. I labeled it. Well, I mean, other people talked about it, but on the show, I labeled it as the greatest weekend in motorsports. Um, and I saw that thrown around throughout the weekend as well. Um, in my eyes, it far exceeded expectations. Um, I'll talk about Monaco real quick. Like I know you didn't get to watch much of it. You caught some of the Indy 500. Um, Monaco race delayed an hour. Everybody thought it was because of the rain, and everybody was rightfully upset about that. Turns out there was actually a power outage in like the control truck, so they couldn't control like the starting lights or like
Huh.
any of the lights. So they rightfully had to delay it an hour.
Yeah.
What they should have done was said, "Hey, we had a power outage. We need to delay this race, not just we're shutting it down for an hour."
Yeah.
And not like where they just red flagged that they went out, they started the pace laps, and they're like, "Yep, red flag," and everybody's like, "Oh, well, this is stupid. It's raining. It's fine." Obviously, there was a righteous reason. Ferrari completely fucks over another driver. Um, Charles Leclerc had that race in the bag, dominated the first part. I know. So he started on wet tires, pits for intermediates. I believe when he got into intermediate tires, he got stuck behind Alex Albon in the Williams and struggled to get around him, cost him a lot of time. Track started to dry out more. They come in to do pit stops. They call in Leclerc, and Sainz was already in the pit, so he had to wait for him. They come out to second and fourth, and then just got stuck behind the Red Bulls. Couldn't make any moves around them. Um, but I thought it was very exciting because I don't want to say I fully understand pit strategies and all that stuff, but there was definitely an excitement level to it in watching that race. And then the leaders were right on top of each other. At any point, it felt like they could have just poked their head out and passed them. Monaco is super hard to pass at. There was multiple times where they went to the hairpin where Leclerc had to jump out of line because he was getting ready to run over the car in front of him. But great race nonetheless. Then immediately we shifted over to Indy. Like as soon as that race ended, like I saw the car across the finish line, I flipped over to NBC to watch Indy 500, and they were already doing the anthem and stuff. So perfect timing, just ran up against each other. In my opinion, one of the best Indy 500s I think they've had in years. It's always a great race there, especially with the current aero package. I mean, 2019 with the duel between Rossi and Pagenaud to the finish, that was amazing. But seeing the Indy at full capacity again was super special, and it was a great race with a lot of ups and downs. I believe it was the first pit stops. Palou and Dixon dominated the first part. They come in to start pit stops, and in the middle of pit stops, there's a wreck, so there's a caution. Palou had not been able to pit yet, so he's out there still. I believe it was second caution, actually, or second pit stops. Anyway, Palou didn't get a chance to make a stop yet, and gets caught out, has to stay out, and his almost runs out of gas. He has to come down pit road when it's closed, so that's a penalty. Goes to the back and just never really recovered from there. Then it looked like it was Dixon's race to lose. Nobody really had a challenge for him. Daly got up there and challenged him for a little bit, which I love to see. But his car kind of faded off a little bit from there. Award came up and challenged. Rosenquist came up and challenged, but nobody had anything for Dixon at all. And then on the final pit stops, Dixon comes in, gets caught speeding, goes to the back, and then it's between Award, Ericsson, and Rosenquist, and it's a great race. Ericsson goes flying by Award on one lap and just starts pulling away. I think it was like 8 laps to go, and he was clicking off laps. I think he was up like a 4-second lead. Like he was just gapping the field. Oh, yeah. And Johnson bends it off of turn 2 into the wall. They immediately bring out the red flag, which everybody really loved. They faced a little bit of backlash. I think it was a 2021 you and I watched. Forget who wrecked, but they didn't throw the red flag. They just parade lapped until the end, and Sato won under caution. A lot of people didn't like that, so this time they said, okay, so they threw the red flag. I agreed with the decision. The crowd went absolutely nuts. They got everything cleaned up, and they did a 2-lap shootout to the finish, and that was the most intense 2 laps I've watched in a long time. You had Award throwing everything he could at Ericsson. When they went into turn 1, they were side by side. I thought they were crashing. I thought there was no way either one of them. I knew Ericsson wasn't backing out, but I was like, there's no way either one of them back out at this point. And they're going through this turn side by side, and they're wrecking each other, and Rosenquist is going to win. Award smartly backed out. I mean, you can leave that to debate. Should he have kept it in? I think he thought he was going to get another run, and I think he would have got it into either 3 or 4 on the last lap, or coming down the front stretch. After they take the white flag, they come off of 2, and Sage Karam gets into the wall, brings out the yellow flag again, and that ends the race that time because they were on the last lap. So Marcus Ericsson with a hugely, I would say, popular victory. I mean, a lot of people unjustly and unfairly hate on him for a lot of reasons, and I don't get it. He's a great driver. He's won multiple races now, and he's proving he belongs in IndyCar. He's a former Formula 1 driver. You can't say he doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
But it was great to see him win. He had a lot of emotion, which, I mean, everybody that wins that race does. And it was not underappreciative of it at all. I do feel bad for him, though, because they were posting pictures still yesterday. He was walking around doing all the media stuff and everything in his race suit, which covered in milk, and he's walking around a day late. I felt so bad for him. Probably smelled horrible. But then we went to the Coke 600. Wow. I don't, that's the only thing I can say about that race. I went to that race last year, and it was the most boring goddamn race I've ever attended in person. The race that you and I went to with 2 cautions at Indy, or Pocono, the Indy race at Pocono, was more entertaining than that because the fuel strategy and stuff playing out was super cool. The race I went to last year, Larson led, I think, all but 60 laps, I think they said the other night, and won all 4 stages, won the race. Sunday night, he had the worst night of his life. He even said it. Started in the back, drove to the front, spun out, went to the back, pitted, got a penalty, had to go to the back. worked his way up again. Pits, gets another penalty. Goes to the back, works his way up again. Pits, his car catches on fire, and then they put it out again. Drives up to the front, and then the last stage he was leading with, up until the end he was leading. Briscoe with a ridiculous again finish to that race. That was super awesome to see. Unfortunate for, and he even came out and said, he's like, listen, I knew where the line was and I went over it, and I just wanted to win the race, and I don't blame him at all. But the racing all night was on point. I think the biggest lead at any point was like 4 seconds, and even then it didn't last long. Every time it seemed like somebody got up to the front and looked like, okay, I have the best car, I'm going to pull away with this race. 2 minutes later, they either blew a tire and were in the wall, or the field just caught them, and then somebody else came up to the front. I was at first I was super upset with NASCAR and Goodyear as a whole, because I know they had tire issues. I think it was 2 weeks ago, and it looked like it was becoming a common theme. And somebody else made a great point. They're like, listen, and you could tell it wasn't every car. Like, yeah, a lot of cars were blistering tires and stuff, and that sucked. And there definitely is issues Goodyear could fix, but a lot of it was setup stuff. And somebody made a good point. Like, a lot of the cars that wrecked because of tires on Sunday night were the same cars that had issues in practice Saturday night. Now, granted, they only get 20 minutes for practice, which they need at least an hour, and I don't get why they don't get it. But it is what it is. But nonetheless, it made for great racing, side by side most of the night. We had Chris Buescher flipping through the infield, which is something I never thought I would see at a mile and a half, which was just absurd to me. But he was okay. Again, a lot of people ripping the safety team because it took 5 minutes for him to get flipped back over onto his tire so he could get out of the car. And listen, I 100% agree. I am not arguing. It took too long. Something they need to keep in mind, though, this was the first time in a race we had a car flip over and they had to go out there and execute this, this new maneuver with this new car, to, get car right side up and get the driver out safely. You don't want to get the driver out when he's upside down, because undoes his belts, he's going to fall and break his neck. Yeah. And I understand they probably practice this nonstop. Think about the first time you did anything in your life, that even if you practice a million times, that you have to do in a pressure-packed situation. You're in front of 80,000, maybe 90,000 people, and you're sitting there and you have to do it perfectly and very quickly the very first time. It's not going to happen. No. The only time you've ever done something successful, the first try with a lot of pressure, the only time you've ever done anything quickly the first time with a lot of pressure on you is when you lost your virginity. Okay. So like I said, I agree. It needed to be done faster. But I think the safety crew still did a great job. They talked to him the whole time, and they did it safely. And that's what matters at the end of the day. And then we had a great race to the finish. 2 green, white checkers, with I think 6 cars piled up on the first one. And then the second one, Busch and Hamlin drove away with it. And real quick, shout out to Kevin Harvick, who, and again, nobody confirmed this. They touched on it for like 5 seconds in the race at the beginning. He had lost power steering. I don't know if he ever got that fixed. They had a bunch of issues on pit road, and somehow he drove up to 3rd place and finished 3rd. So, he's my favorite driver, but still, shout out to him. Next week, they will be at Gateway for the first time, which I'm really excited to see that race. I've always loved Gateway as a track. IndyCar goes there all the time. Puts on a great show. The Busch Series used to go there. I don't think they do anymore, but I know they used to all the time, and so did the Truck Series. But I'm really excited to see NASCAR take on that track. Another fun little oval. I have talked so much in the last 5 minutes, so we're going to move on now. And it's time to talk about Nick's favorite thing, some football.
Favorite's probably a little bit of a stretch, but nonetheless, especially now, because I swear to God, I think about hockey and golf probably 75% of the time I'm awake. Specifically golf, especially because there's like 5 coworkers at work who all golf. And
yeah.
Like every time we pass each other, we're just talking about it. But nonetheless, it is the beginning of the summer here, so we still have a long way to go. I believe we have 2 months until we start our college football previews. But I miss good football. The USFL, the fan controlled football league, whatever, have their moments, but I feel like I'm not alone when I say it's nothing compared to college football or the NFL. So, with that being said, uh, I wanted to spark a little conversation here. Um, we had already got Slade's picks. We'll talk about it or Slade's pick. We'll talk about it in a second. But I want to know your way too early Super Bowl champion pick.
Bears. No, I'm
I
kidding.
want your way too early realistic.
No. Even as a Bears fan, I think that team's gonna win maybe 5 games this year. But we'll talk about that when it's time for the season. Um, I don't know. I really want to say Bills. Just because I feel like they're probably a favorite. I I don't know. For me, it's really hard to pick somebody at this point because, like, I mean, you think about like all the great teams from last year. Most of them have kept a large chunk of their roster, but I feel like you know the Chiefs could come out and like only win 5 games, and like I just feel like that's the kind of year we're coming up for in the NFL. Just some
Been a lot of changes.
yeah wilder than last year, if anything. Um, and I don't want to jinx the Bills. I really don't. Um,
Well, you think about it. They're, with the new overtime rules, like, or I don't know if they made them official yet, but
yeah, no, they are. Yeah, well, yeah,
okay,
in the I think it's postseason only.
postseason only. Yeah,
Everybody gets
yeah,
one possession.
yeah. So you think
Um,
about that. Like, really, that's the only difference
I,
between, in my opinion, them being in the Super Bowl and them not.
they still lose that game.
You're probably right.
Listen, if that would have been the rule last year, that game would have went for 6 hours.
Definitely.
Um, well, so I don't know if I mean we'll have to look into this and talk about it more later. I don't know if it's they keep alternating like if the Chiefs score, Bills score. If the Chiefs score again, is the game over, or do they keep going? Which I believe it's if they both score, whoever scores next wins. Um, Nonetheless, I I still think they lose that game. Just because the defense. I am gonna go. Fuck, I'll go with the Chargers. I think they made a lot of great offseason moves. I think they were one stupid call away from making the playoffs last year and probably making a decent run in the playoffs. Um, with their head coach deciding to call a timeout for no reason when the Raiders were like, okay, let's tie and we both go to the playoffs. And they're like, nope, timeout. The Raiders are like, okay, fuck you. We're going to win then. Yeah, so I think if their coach can rely, and he won't, but if he can rely a little less on the analytics, because I feel like that was their biggest problem is he would just stare at the stats the whole time, like, okay, this is what we need to do, and it's like you also need to have a feel for like stats, analytics, everything is great. At some point, you need to have a feel for the game itself too, and okay, this is what we need, this is what you know, stuff like that. But yeah, I'll take the Chargers.
That's not a bad pick, for sure. I think Justin Herbert takes another huge leap. They've added a lot in the offseason, as well as a couple other teams in their division. That division could very well uh, hold the Super Bowl winner. I definitely want that on you on that.
Mhm.
I am going to go with the Bills. I've been with them for the last 2 years. Again, I do agree with you with the way their defense was struggling to cover the Chiefs. They probably do still go on to lose that game. But nonetheless, how many defenses don't struggle with,
Yeah,
trying to hold that Chiefs team together now? Obviously, they don't have Tyreek Hill anymore, which I think is um, definitely a huge loss for them. You think about, I have this argument with people all the time. Oh, everybody says, "Oh, Tyreek Hill is the top three wide receiver in the NFL." I, he's not. Plain and simply, he's fast as hell. Yes, he can catch, but let's be honest. If you take point 2 seconds off of his 40 time, completely different wide receiver. He, lives off of burning people. And yes, he can get the ball in short field and make people miss and whatnot, but that's
yeah.
not the point I'm getting at here. Nonetheless, the Bills, you know, their defense was obviously good. It's been good. The offense continues to make strides. I think they need a more solid running back, but nonetheless, and maybe a little extra help on the wide receiver side now. Davis has gotten better, especially last year. He made a big leap, but a little bit of something to help Diggs out wouldn't hurt. But um, the Von Miller signing, I they're gonna regret it eventually. But if he can do what they're asking him to do, which is come in on third downs and create pressure, which at 33 years old he's still able to do.
Yeah.
Props to him by all means. I don't know if I'll be able to run a 40 at 33 years old, but um,
I can barely run a 40 now.
yeah, fair enough. I run to the fridge and I'm tired, but nonetheless, um, you know, pressuring the quarterback. I don't want to necessarily say it was a glaring issue for the Bills, but there were times when they needed to get pressure and they weren't.
Yeah.
So I think he makes a huge difference in that. Their secondary is great, which obviously will benefit from Von Miller being there. And quite honestly, they've been close the last 2 years. The Chiefs have kind of been their kryptonite, and I personally think they took a step back. So I'm picking them because, in my opinion, it's this year or bust for the Bills.
Um, yeah, and like I said, I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just I don't want to take them because I know I'll jinx them, and I
Yeah.
would really like to see them win the Super Bowl.
Oh, they win the Super Bowl. I already told my boy I'm going through tables.
Oh no, we had that agreement last year. Remember?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did.
Anyway, the last thing I want to say about the Chiefs, I feel like one as a whole, and we're going to talk about Slade's Super Bowl pick here in a second. Next week we'll have him elaborate on it. But with the AFC West, it has become the most stacked division in the NFL. I think the Chiefs are the most likely team in that division to miss the playoffs. And like we're going to talk so much more about the NFL come preseason time and stuff. Biggest reason why is one, they lost their arguably one of their biggest players. Two, I feel like as a whole, well, I mean, actually, you think to the defense too. They lost Tyrann Mathieu, who carried that defense most of the time last year.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, I feel like they lost way too many key pieces, and I feel like they have arguably the toughest schedule in the NFL. But like I said, we'll talk about that more. We're planning out our future episodes as we speak. So when it's NFL season preview time, definitely get into that more. Real quick, Slade's pick. He took the Broncos. Again, I don't hate that pick. I feel like their offense last year was a quarterback away from competing for a playoff spot. Obviously, they don't have Von Miller still, which hurts their defense. But their defense was actually still, I feel like, really good even without him last year once he left. So yeah, I don't hate his pick. I think there's better picks out there, but like I said, I feel like next year is like this year was crazy, and we had so many storylines and so much stuff happen. I feel like this year is just going to get kicked in the overdrive, and it's going to be a lot crazier. So who knows? The Broncos could very well go on and win a damn Super Bowl.
It very well could be. My biggest question mark with that, and I didn't want to start him with it. We'll get to it. When the time comes. But for instance, the Washington Commanders were a team that were in the Russell Wilson sweepstakes, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And people would ask me like, "Oh, how do you feel about Russell Wilson?" Now, mind you, he was an upgrade from Taylor Heineke, one way or the other. Love Heineke, love his heart, but heart only gets you so far. He was an upgrade. I would have taken him. But he wasn't my favorite quarterback that was available to us at the time.
Yeah.
And it's no hate on him necessarily. He's had a great career. Um, he's very smart. But you look at now, I'll elaborate on the Broncos wide receivers here in a minute. But he struggled. I know he dealt with his injury and stuff, but even before the injury, he struggled with Tyler Lockett and DJ Metcalf or DK Metcalf, not DJ. And again, even before the injury, and those were players that he's used to playing with. He had played with them for a couple years now, and mind you, it wasn't all him and them, but like I said, I'll elaborate on that comparison to the Broncos wide receiver core. I think the Broncos wide receiver core could be one of the most dangerous in the NFL, especially if Wilson can get back even to 80% of what we've seen Wilson be in the past. Um, but from what I've seen from them so far, and again, they've been missing a QB, so it's hard to tell exactly what they're working with in there. Um, but I don't see a single wide receiver in that group that can be compared to, say, DK Metcalf. Now,
Yeah.
you know, again, we haven't seen a whole lot. Um, there's definitely room for improvement there. They could be hiding something. I don't get, like, every time somebody talks about the Broncos wide receivers, they bring up Patrick. I'm like, he's not even that good. Like, he's just a veteran, and if I'm Drew Lock or I'm somebody else, like, he's probably going to be the guy I throw the ball to. Um, but he doesn't blow you away with anything.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I've been very excited about that wide receiver room for the past 2 years. Um, so I'm excited to see if Russ can bring it all together and make them look good. They got the running backs.
Yeah.
Like you said, the defense looked good. So I don't hate the pick either, but there's definitely some question marks in there
We'll have to see too if how much trouble Jerry Judy gets in, and if he's playing this year, how many games he plays, etc. But yeah, definitely we're getting closer and closer to football season with every week, and we are definitely excited for that. Moving on, it is time for the top five this week. Went with food because I was hungry when I made this. Um,
some
Shocking.
of our best top fives have been food.
Yeah. So top five this week is what is your go-to concession item whenever you're at a sporting event? Slade gave us his top five. We'll read it here for you. Number five, he has a snow cone / Dippin' Dots, which I feel is an elite pick. Um, love me some good Dippin' Dots.
Oh yeah,
I don't care if Steve Storm thinks I'm a loser for liking Dippin' Dots.
and they might be expensive for a little bowl.
Yeah.
Right
But
up your
snow
street.
cone too. I mean, snow cone is something that is at every sporting event from high school until the day you die. Um, well, not even like at a high school event, I should say. I mean, obviously you can get a snow cone whenever you want as a kid, but nonetheless, what's your favorite flavor snow cone?
So I can't even tell you what like the actual flavor is, but
Hmm.
it's tiger's blood.
Okay,
I
that
forget
is a
what
good
the
one.
actual flavors are in it, but
Yeah.
it's
Um,
my I wouldn't necessarily
Watermelon is probably my favorite.
watermelon's the best.
Watermelon and root beer is up there for me too. Like I love root beer, but a good root beer snow cone, I feel like is like just
Oh
tickles
yeah,
your tonsils.
and I wouldn't necessarily say that like tiger's blood is like my favorite.
Hmm.
Like it's as far as flavor goes, but it's the one that I know if I go to a snow cone stand that I've never been to before that I can get it and I will enjoy.
Right. Okay. Uh, Continue with Slade's list here. Number four, he has fries, just fries. Which I mean, I love me a good French fry.
Yeah,
Number three, he got very specific here. He said beer, but it needs to be in a plastic cup, not in a can. He hates canned beer at sporting events. He loves it out of a plastic
understandable.
cup. Oh yeah. Number two, he has a hot dog. And number one, he has nachos. So Nick, real quick, what's your top five here?
Yeah, so a lot of similarities. So number five, I had a hot dog with chili.
Yeah, you
Um,
stole that from me, but yeah.
I did because I told you, I felt like the hot dog had to be on the list just because you think
Yeah.
of like ballparks, you think of hot dogs, but hot dogs with chili are probably one of my favorite foods, like in
Yeah.
general.
Every time I
Um,
go to Sheets, that's what I like to get, even though I know I'm gonna pay for it. But I just
yeah,
Sheets dog with chili. It's just
mm, or like Rudders, which we're probably talking about shit that people who listen to this might not know about. But
we have
they have
five listeners. They all live in Pennsylvania. They know what
yeah,
Sheets and rubbers are.
that's fair, that's fair. But they do that 2 for 1 or 2 for 2 or
Yeah.
whatever the hell that it is.
Oh my god, their funnel
Incredible.
cake fries. Oh my god.
Funnel cake fries are bomb. But
I miss Rudders so much down here just because like I just want funnel cake fries.
right. All right. My number four, I put popcorn / kettle corn because it kind of
Okay.
depends on the mood, but I'm a big fan of kettle corn, but
I
not
really
all places.
I don't hate kettle corn, but it's definitely not my go-to. But I do love a good tub of popcorn when you're sitting there, especially at like I feel like baseball it's better suited for because baseball you can sit there and just
Yeah.
relax and enjoy the game. Whereas football, you're kind of like let's like it's
Yeah.
more intense, I guess. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm sorry. I keep derailing you here.
No, no, that's all right. By all means, we're supposed to conversate. Number three, I also stole this from you. Pretzels with cheese. I only stole it from you because I didn't even think about it at the time. But as
Yeah,
soon as I seen it on your list, I was like, oh shit, I gotta
yeah,
put that on there. Because like that's another thing. Like our high school football games. When I was going to them before I started playing, they had the pretzels with cheese,
Hmm.
and I don't know what cheese they used, but it was good. I like my cheese. I don't like just plain like nacho cheese. I like it to
Yeah.
have a little spice in it,
Yeah.
little something
See,
extra.
like for me, like I love pretzel. Like if it has a nacho cheese, fine. That's what I eat. If they have like the spicy brown mustard, I like that too. That's good. If I go to an event, and we kind of touched on this with like the Orioles having like a crab pretzel,
Hmm.
even if it doesn't have anything else on it, if it has a cheese baked onto the pretzel, I will go bankrupt buying everything that you have in stock because that like pretzels with cheese is good. Pretzels with baked cheese
Hmm.
is god tier. But yeah, anyway.
We're gonna have to do a top five cheeses at some point, just because
Oh yeah.
cheese is great. But nonetheless, my number two, I added a little bit to one of Slade's picks. I said chicken tenders with fries. I like my fries with vinegar and Old Bay,
Yes.
by the way.
Yes.
Just plain. Um,
It's the way
but
real
I'm
Americans do it. And
that
people that don't know what obey is, they one, you need to get it, but two, you're missing out because
yeah, like we grew up close enough to Maryland that we just throw Old Bay on shit. Um, it is what it is. You can't go wrong. I've never
yeah.
put Old Bay on something and been like, man, this sucks. Um, but I'm not typically just a fry getter. I
Yeah.
typically like whether it's little league games, whether it's professional sports. If I see chicken tenders and fries on the menu, there's a good chance I'm gonna cop it. One, because it's usually the cheaper option, and
Hmm.
two, like I've never been anywhere and got bad chicken
Yeah.
tenders.
The one I growing up, I used to only get fries, but it was usually like the carnivals where they had like it was literally just fries. It was
Oh
like
yeah,
Brickers fries, and then
yeah.
but
If it's
yeah,
Brickers, like
yeah. But like I mean, if it just sells fries, hey, I'm fine with that. But yeah, I
yeah,
mean, 9 times out of 10, most places don't just like you can probably just get a basket of fries, but like they sell other stuff there.
yeah.
But yeah,
Speaking of like sheets, since we were talking about sheets, they have that bucket of fries.
oh my god, that is
Dude, when
clutch.
when I was in high school, I couldn't tell you how many buckets I put down, but
Yeah,
nonetheless, number one, I put nachos with cheese, but I'm more of a nacho supreme kind of guy. I love me some jalapenos
okay.
and a little bit of salsa, but there's nothing wrong with sitting there and just eating some nachos and cheese. And I don't know, it's just one of those things that it's kind of boring if you think about it, but it's just so good. It just brings happiness to me. Now I will say, um, some places will serve you some soggy ass nachos. That's
Yeah,
a huge turn off. But the majority of the time, they're fresh and
yeah.
super
Like
tasty.
if you give me like pre-made nachos, like they already put the cheese on there and stuff, it needs to be like shredded cheese that they drizzled on top and then put all the other toppings in there. That's fine. If you just hand me a basket of nachos with cheese already on it, and it's just like the pump nacho cheese or like the Velveeta mix they just have in a tub back there, they pour it on and hand it to you. I hate that because that's when it instantly becomes soggy.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. Uh, my top five. So in fifth place, I have beer. I'll take beer of any kind at a game. The reason I have it so low at five, and you left it off, is one, it's overpriced, but two, not everywhere sells it. Like especially like if you go to college football games, not every college has it. We were talking Penn State doesn't sell beer at games, stuff like that. So that's why I have it so low at five. But I do love me a good beer when we go to a game. Number four, I have pretzels with cheese. Again, if it's baked on, it instantly becomes number one. Not too many places do that though. So we're at four with that. Number three, hot dog with chili. Um, again, can't go wrong with a good chili cheese dog. Number two, I have chicken tenders with fries. Um, again, like you said, it's most likely the cheapest option there. And if you go to an event and like, I mean, especially baseball stadiums now, like just about every stadium has its own um, specialty item or whatever you want to call it. Um, and listen, I would love to try them, but sometimes you go somewhere and you're like, I don't know what I want to get. Chicken tenders with fries is just like the safest, most obvious choice and way to go. And number one is nachos. I don't think I've ever had a bad nacho at any sporting event, and I feel like it's right there in price comparison to chicken tenders. Like if I walk out into the concourse and whatever first place I see, if it has chicken tenders, I'll get that. If it has not, because I feel like they sell both, but and sometimes I'll get both. I don't care.
Oh yeah.
Um, but it's oh my god, especially if you take the chicken tender and you dip it in the nacho cheese, that is mm,
Superb.
yeah, absolutely. Um, So
I
now
think
that
there's a little bit of nostalgia with the chicken tenders and fries.
oh yeah, I mean, I don't do it at restaurant. Like, I mean, unless, but
Oh,
like,
that irritates the shit out of me.
yeah,
Like if we can go somewhere and you can get like a nice juicy steak or even like a nice juicy burger,
yeah.
and you order fucking chicken tenders,
Now
like
listen,
you're a
if you're
6-year-old with a kid menu.
if you're doing it for cost reasons, that's one thing.
That is.
But yeah, no, yeah, I agree with you. The only time it's acceptable to get chicken tenders in public is if you're at Chick-fil-A or at like Buffalo Wild Wings and you get boneless wings, which are basically chicken tenders. Um, yeah, I mean, if you go out to Chili's and now listen, you can get the tray, the barbecue tray, and get the chicken tenders on there with your barbecue too. That's fine. I don't hate you. Don't just
Yeah.
get the kids
Or like
chicken
a
tenders.
like an appetizer sampler or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Like but if
yeah.
your entree at any place other than a fucking chicken restaurant is chicken tenders, I'm not taking you out to eat anymore.
Yeah.
Just put that out there.
So now that we made ourselves hungry, I think it's time to wrap up the show. But thank you guys so much for checking us out this week. I hope Slade is enjoying his lovely night at work. And he missed a lot of fun.
He did.
But it's okay. He'll listen. He'll come back next week. He'll explain to us why he thinks the Broncos are going to the Super Bowl. Like I said, we're getting so close to football season. We can't wait to talk about that. But before we get there, we have the rest of NHL playoffs to get through, which is going to be a lot of fun. But nonetheless, like I said, thank you guys so much for checking this out. As always, please go follow our social medias, subscribe to our YouTube. We are working. Nick has a baby on the way. I just got married, just had my honeymoon. Slade's getting a new job.
To move.
Yeah. Our lives are crazy, but we do have a ton of fun content planned that we want to bring you guys. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of that, as well as you don't miss any of our weekly podcasts. We would love for you guys to stick with us. I mean, we're going to have a lot of fun this summer, but when we get to football season, I feel like this podcast is just going to go up to the next level, and it's going to be a lot more fun. But like I said, socials, go follow, like, subscribe to our YouTube. I think that's it.
I believe so.
Okay. Well, in that case,
I think we're still in the process of working on a new merch store, but
we are
talked about it in a little while. So
we sat down, we had a discussion like, hey, we need to get together and like talk about a new merch line. And we're like, okay, let's do it. And then we just have not done that yet, but we will.
Yeah. Again, our lives are crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, crazy lives, but crazy fun on the way to bring to you guys. And we are super excited. Yeah, we will see you guys next week. We're going to go eat some chicken tenders with some nachos and go watch some.
Ballpark.
Yeah, go watch some hockey and some basketball. But we will see you guys next week.
Yep, see you guys.